Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Tanisha Singleton, adjunct faculty in the media psychology department here at Fielding Graduate University. I'm always very, very excited about this time of year and super honored because this is the time when students are graduating and they are presenting their capstone. And I've said this before, but it bears repeating because it is very much an honor when students ask me to be their advisor and supervise them on this exit journey for them in the graduate program. Getting a master's, this is not an easy thing. This isn't something that everybody can do. And so to entrust me, to entrust anyone that they select, I think is a big deal, and it's a big honor, and it's always something that I enjoy doing. And it's something that I won't just say yes to anyone, right? Like I've had the pleasure of teaching a couple of different courses within this program. And Chris here is somebody that I've had the honor of having a couple of different times in the Foundations of Media Psychology, our intro course, and then also the Community Psych course that I launched a couple of years ago here in the program as an elective. And Chris actually started the program, what did we just say? Summer of 2019. And I remember when we were doing the NSO, our new student orientation, and then launching into the intro class, Chris was always just very, very curious, very, very energetic, very, very engaging with his peers and his cohorts within the course as well, because this is something that everyone comes from so many different backgrounds. So many people come from different walks of life and professional lives too. And Chris has a very, very interesting and unique background. And that perspective is something that he was able to add so much value and contribute greatly throughout not only the beginning of his journey, starting 3 years ago, basically, all the way up until now, not losing steam at all. And of also overcoming extreme obstacles that I'll let him share if he wants to, about this whole process towards the later part of the summer and preparing for this capstone. But with his background in aircraft engineering, and flight mechanics and all of these things and engineering, that's something that's not a lot of people come to this program with that perspective and with that industry background. So that, and applying it to media psychology and those patterns between media consumption and human behavior, very, very interesting. And I've had the pleasure of seeing this capstone presentation come from ideation to completion. So I'm very, very excited to kick it over to Chris and have him share that with you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And this is a very exciting time for myself here. And I know you wanted me to talk a little bit about my experience in the program. I'll start with that. First of all, I found the program very good. I've seen how Fielding has actually changed the program a little bit since I first started in it. Really enjoy the latest format where there's a lot of teacher interaction, a lot of interaction with the students. And, I came to this program, as she mentioned, my background is in engineering. And my professional background is I've been an aircraft engineer for way too long now. And of course, as an engineer, we focus on the skills of, technical skills, and soft skills are often kind of last to develop. So, I took an interest in psychology a few years ago. And when I was looking to do a master's, I looked around, and a lot of people had MBAs, or they had very generic degrees in organizational management, that sort of thing. And those things aren't bad. But I didn't have any particular interest in those. And, like, for instance, with an MBA, I'm like, I can already read a spreadsheet. I'm already really good at numbers. So I wanted a program that would challenge me a little bit, and also something that could, further my interest in psychology. My background goes, I spent 2 years in the marketing department where I work. And that got me interested in marketing. And so I saw the psychology and the marketing side, and these two kind of fit together really well in the media psychology world. Also, I've been an advocate for shared parenting, which is basically in divorce, where judges would give equal time to both parents, and divorce for fit, willing, and able parents. I've been an advocate for that for several years now. I'm actually the chair of the National Parents Organization in the Kansas chapter, and I'm active in the national level doing their social media. And so the advocacy part of the media psychology program really interested me as well. So that's really how I got to Fielding. Was, did a Google search for media psychology, and of course Fielding came right up. And I found the program to be excellent. It's allowed me to continue to work full time while also working in my schoolwork. I'm not going to say it hasn't been challenging, because it is definitely challenging to do that. And I do have two kids. They're both teenagers. So I always tell people, please send help, because I've got one that's driving and one that's going to drive next year. So it is definitely a challenge to work full time, raise teenagers and also do a master's. And then she mentioned also about adversity. So just basically last April, so just as this semester was kicking off, my house was destroyed by a tornado. So I get to say that I've now had the full Kansas experience, and it didn't just kind of hit the side of the house. It took the whole house out. So there wasn't a single wall standing. So my kids and I were lucky enough to be relocated into a rental house about a week later. And we've been literally picking up the pieces since. And so right now my house has been completely demolished back down to the foundation. And I have materials on order, and they're going to start rebuilding the house here soon. So definitely going through that experience, and doing the last bit of masters here has been very challenging. Of course, insurance wants all sorts of things. So I can definitely say I've had my time in front of the computer the last couple of months, and I'm definitely ready to finish the program and sort of move on with things. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the program. It has had some topics that are definitely challenging and interesting. And again, the interaction between the students and the faculty has been great. And just looking forward to contribute to this field as we move forward. I also have a marketing business on the side, so I have used a lot of the skills and principles that we've talked about in class, and I think that's really helped me, bring a lot of value to my customers, and so I'm thankful for that. So with that, I think, did I cover everything?
You sure did. It's
All
perfect.
right, so with that, I'll get into the presentation here,
Excellent.
and I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen. Where did well, hang on. I guess I have to share my screen first before.
There we go.
All right, we're sharing now. Of course, technology always is the first thing to go. So again, my name is Chris Batcheller, and I am presenting the topic of integrating virtual reality as used in the aircraft sales process. And I chose this topic primarily because my day job is to work. I work at an aircraft company. We manufacture aircraft all the way from small propeller-driven airplanes all the way up through business jets. And I have worked in both the engineering and the marketing spaces within this company. And so being an early adopter of technology, I thought about, well, how can we really improve our sales process? And of course, virtual reality is one of those new technologies. And so I really wanted to look in depth at how virtual reality can be used as a tool, as a real tool, and not just really as a, oh, gee, wow, that's neat kind of a thing. So I wanted to dive into what are some of the ways that we could use this new technology to our advantage. And there are several reasons for that I'll get into within the presentation. So before we get started, I know not everybody's a real expert on selling airplanes because of the very niche topic. And so I want to talk a little bit about the very high level overview of the process of selling an airplane. And the very first step of that process is not unlike a lot of other sales processes where you have to identify the customer. And so we have this whole, basic, process around identifying customers and then reaching out to customers. And, sometimes we have customers reach out to us, but there's this whole process around identifying that customer. And then once we talk to the customer, we make over 20 different models of airplanes where I work. And so you have to really determine, which airplane is going to be right for them. Of course, everybody wants the most expensive jet, but not everybody really needs the most expensive jet. Or the nicest jet. Sometimes a smaller airplane will work better for them. And you also have to work within financial constraints. And so we would do a really good job, in our marketing department and our sales department of working with customers and finding out really what their mission needs are and which one of those airplanes that we make that will fit those needs best. Now, eventually we get far down the sales process and we want to demo the aircraft to the customer. And that involves flying an airplane to them usually, or sometimes the customer will fly to our location and then we'll give them a flight in the airplane. And sometimes that involves the customer flying the airplane if it's a smaller airplane, if it's a bigger jet. then they essentially sit in the back and our pilots will fly them around, and then our pilots will talk to their pilots and that sort of a thing. And then eventually a deal gets struck and we go and deliver an aircraft. And so I wanted to look at virtual reality and see where in these, major milestones of the sales process can we really fit in virtual reality. And so far, you'll see in this presentation, we really can help virtual reality with that block of determining the right aircraft, and then also the demo aircraft is where we can help with some virtual reality things. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the significance of this, and really, there's a lot of significance with incorporating new technology into the sales process, because traditionally, people who buy airplanes have been older. The demographic is overwhelmingly older, men, and business owners, things like that. And so, as technology changes, we're seeing our customer base shift, and these are younger consumers. They're more tech savvy than they have before. And traditionally, the aerospace industry has really lagged behind other industries in adopting new technologies. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is that changing technology in the aerospace industry is very expensive, because a lot of times we have to go and certify things. We have to deal with the government, get approvals, all that sort of thing. So we're very reluctant usually to incorporate new technology. But in this case, virtual reality doesn't affect those areas where the Federal Aviation Administration is involved, and we can really adopt that very quickly without having to go through the certification or all the regulations that are associated with the actual aircraft themselves. Another point is that we want to digitally connect with the customer. We want to be able to connect to the customer where they are. So as I said, our customers are becoming younger and more tech savvy, and they are becoming more and more digital citizens. And so in order to connect to that digital world, we need to have an avenue to be able to do that. The point I wanted to bring up was there's benefits for both the customer and the company by utilizing virtual reality. So the customer can benefit by getting a better vision of what the airplane is, and they can do that more rapidly, because now instead of looking at one airplane at a time, you can look at 5 or 6 within the same session. And also the company can benefit by not having to fly airplanes so many places. Now, this is not going to replace a demo fleet, but it can certainly help in that beginning stage when you're trying to figure out which airplane is right for which customer. So I want to talk a little bit about what virtual reality is. And virtual reality is a new technology, and it's not so new anymore. It's been around for a few years now, but it is definitely maturing rapidly in its current state. And it is definitely has some promising capabilities. But we want to be able to bring customer into a digital world, and that world is simulated primarily by the visual senses, but also can be through vibration, right, from haptic feedback. There's also some technology out there that can allow a customer to walk around in the world digitally, even though they're physically not moving in space. They can walk around, and so there's a lot of interesting things that we can do with virtual reality. And all this is coming at a lower and lower cost, because now there are a lot of commercial units out there that can be used, and those units are, the cost again is coming down, and so companies can really take advantage of leveraging this digital technology without having to spend so much money. If they would have tried this 10 years ago, it would have been 10 or 20 times the cost that it is now. So it's really becoming more and more cost effective. There are a number of levels of virtual reality, and I primarily want to just show 3 primary categories here. The first is a non-immersive environment, and that's what we think of when we have a video game. A video game is played in a computer monitor and a keyboard and a mouse, right? You can see a digital world, but you're not really immersed in it. The next one is going to be semi-immersive, and this is where you have a head-mounted device or a cave, but you're not interacting with controls of the airplane per se. You can just see that digital world, but not really touch it in any significant way. And the last category is fully immersive, which is the same as semi-immersive, except it also includes physical objects that would replicate the controls of the aircraft, or seats, or those sorts of things, to really bring in a fully immersive environment. The next one, okay, so now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the psychological theory that I used when looking at this technology. So the first one is going to be narrative transportation theory, and I'm going to go into each one of these in a bit of detail, so I won't cover that here. The next is narrative processing. Then we have transmedia storytelling, persuasion, and motivated reasoning. And I showed these in a circle because I really believe that all of these theories really kind of build upon each other, right? So if you were just to look at each one of these individually, they all have a little bit of effect, but when you combine them all together, they have a much more powerful effect. The first theory we want to talk about is narrative transportation theory. And I put a picture of Disney World here because, or Disneyland, because it really does show kind of that principle of, transporting the world into that user experience. And when you're at, Disney World or Disneyland, you are truly immersed, in their world, right? You feel like you're in their characters. Well, we can do the same thing digitally. And we can also bring the consumer into the story. And with narrative transportation theory, if we can get the customer or the consumer or the user into the story, we can also change their intentions and change their beliefs and things like that. So it can be a very powerful thing. But it's important to note when you're doing a virtual reality experience, you have to, you gotta have more than just transporting them into a room and showing them the product, right? You have to come up with a story around that. And that's where narrative processing comes in, because you want to have a story element to have the highest degree of transportation. And this is perhaps maybe the most challenging part of creating a realistic and believable and useful virtual reality experience. Because if you build a story around that experience, you're going to have the highest degree of transportation. And it is, again, the very hardest thing to do. So I've got a picture here of the hero's journey. And it, you might not be able to get all of these elements with, just showing a customer a product, but if you can figure out a way to creatively get the customer into a story and using the product in that story, that's when you're going to have the most effect of using this technology. The next piece I want to talk about was transmedia storytelling. And this is very important because customers will see the product through the VR experience. They will also see it, in other advertisements. Their friends may talk about it if they have one. But really, it's just as this graphic shown here. There's all these puzzle pieces, and they all fit together to create that experience. So it's very important that virtual reality, again, should be seen as additive and not something that's completely different than what the consumer's, familiar with. So in other words, the logos and the branding and the feel and the look of everything inside the virtual reality should be very similar to what they see in real life. For instance, if your product marketing features a lot of actual photography or, very realistic renderings, then the virtual reality experience shouldn't be cartoonish, right? It should kind of mimic what the actual marketing material looks like. And that will help the consumer not be confused by what they're seeing in VR versus the media and marketing that they're seeing in real life. The next thing I want to talk about is persuasion. And, basically, if you look at the foundation here, customers are going to have, if they're buying an airplane, they're going to be pretty high up, on the pyramid here, right? And so we're talking about esteem needs and self-actualization. And so, you want to really work on your storyline and things like that will really talk to those needs for the consumer or the customer. And so with persuasion, we're trying again to influence their beliefs, attitudes, intentions. And it's important to note that it can either be a pure or a borderline, right? So, a pure persuasion is basically a hard marketing sell. And we want to avoid that whenever we can, because pure persuasion can be a little bit of a turnoff or a big turnoff for the customer. And so we want to make sure that we're not, just, hey, buy this airplane because it's fantastic. You want to really show them the benefits and really move into that a little bit softer. Then we have motivated reasoning, and I found this little clip here with the pointy hair boss from Dilbert, and it really kind of talks to, motivated reasoning. And essentially, motivated reasoning is the customer is looking for a way to justify their decision in their head. In other words, they can't make that decision purely based on facts, right? There has to be some other reason that's going to push them over, and they have a little bit of a bias, right? So Motivated reasoning leads to justifications based on emotion rather than actual, reflection of the evidence. And this is important when dealing with aircraft sales, because a lot of times, if you look just at the financial numbers without taking in any of the other benefits, it can be hard to justify the cost of an airplane because they are obviously expensive. And so if you look just purely at the numbers and don't take into consideration, additional funds that a company can make because now they are, more places than they used to be, or the delays they're not going to have because of airlines and those sorts of things, then basically, it's hard to justify an airplane, again, just based on finances. But with motivated reasoning within virtual reality space, you can give the consumer or the customer that extra little incentive to say, yeah, I can see me in this airplane, and it feels emotionally good because of, XYZ reason. When looking at this, I also looked at what are the virtual reality best practices, because right now there's a lot of virtual reality experiences out there that are very gimmicky and they're not very useful, right? So I wanted to look at what's the best practices when coming up with a virtual reality experience and how can a company use that to their advantage. And the first thing, obviously, is keep in mind the psychological theories that we've talked about that will help develop those powerful and emotional experiences. And again, coming up that story narrative is probably the most difficult part of this, but it is an integral part of coming up with a good experience. Then if we flip over and look at user experience, a consumer has to have a positive user experience with the virtual reality software and the hardware, because if they don't, it's going to be seen as a negative towards the product and the company itself. And we certainly don't want to make things worse. We're trying to make things better with virtual reality. So again, that's really important. And some guidelines that I found here are to assume that the user is not a VR enthusiast, make sure that the technology is simple and easy to use. And there's also, if the company is going to use, the Oculus MetaQuest 2 kind of thing, or whatever, software, hardware that they use, make sure that that best practices guide or that any information from the manufacturer is followed, so that you have the best experience possible when you're programming these experiences. And again, the hardware must be easy to use and bug-free. And test, and retest. I cannot stress that enough. Make sure that you have looked at this several different ways, because you don't want your users finding out that software didn't work in this case because of XYZ, because that's going to degrade their experience. And the last point that I have here is to train the sales team, because they're going to be the ones typically using this with the customer. So they should be well trained on the software, on the hardware, and know how things work, and not be afraid of it. Then I looked at several use cases that we could do with virtual reality and selling airplanes. And the first was a self-guided experience. So this would be maybe a phone app or something on the computer where you could kind of walk through an airplane. It's not fully immersive, but it does transport the user a little bit. It helps them visualize themselves being in that product and using that product. And so there's, I think, a lot of things you can do here. This would be very easy to develop from a software side, and it could also be made widely available. And so it wouldn't have to be used with training from the sales team, that sort of thing. It could be a self-guided experience from the user side. The next thing I looked at was online collaboration, because often buyers of airplanes and the sales team are not located exactly next to each other. Sometimes they're in the same country, but not physically close to each other. Other times they're in different countries. And so using something like Meta's Horizon Workrooms could be a way to help customers and the sales team feel just a little bit more connected and have productive meetings, which is, got a higher bit of transportation than just using a Zoom video call or just a simple telephone call even. So this could be one example where the company could come up with different ways for the sales team and the customers to work together. The sales team could even mail the customer a VR headset, that sort of thing that's already, hooked up into the ecosystem. And I think that would be a good way for them to collaborate. But again, only for those customers that want to use the technology. The next thing I looked at was something that typically is not done in the aviation space right now, but it would be to copy or to modify or basically take inspiration from the Tesla model, which is to open up a retail space in a fixed location. And that could be something like a shopping mall or perhaps at an airport, that sort of thing. But have a place where you can have some physical items, maybe not a whole airplane, but you can have parts of the airplane. You can have virtual reality experiences so that people can, experience the airplane without having to physically go out to the airport and see it. And that would allow them, again, to look at many different models in a short period of time. One other benefit of setting these retail spaces up would be that you would reach customers that you may typically not reach because they're not typically reached through a retail environment. We typically reach customers through regional sales associates, and they make cold calls or they send marketing material out, that sort of thing. So having a retail space where you can have customers come to you, you may net some customers that you otherwise would not have gotten. So I want to, we're getting kind of close to the end here. I want to say why virtual reality, what are some of the major benefits of it? So again, it allows the customer to interact with the products, and we're going to reduce the cost of aircraft demos. And so you may not eliminate flying an airplane out and demoing it to a serious customer, but what you may do is eliminate some customers that aren't really that serious and use the VR space as a way to sort of filter out which customers are really serious and which ones are not. So if you do that, then you would also reduce your carbon footprint on your demo fleet. You would save costs on fuel, you would save costs on pilots and hotel rooms and all that sort of thing. So virtual reality could be used as a way to really cut down the cost for the demo fleet. And I did find the statistics that 88% of customers are expecting companies to accelerate digital initiatives due to COVID-19. And so customers are really expecting companies to really step up with their digital initiatives. And so this could be seen as a way for a company to do that. There's also precedent within the aviation space. We've used simulators for many, many years. That's very widely accepted. And virtual reality really is just kind of the next step up from a non-immersive environment simulator that we've used to train pilots for a very, very long time. And also the Air Force here has recently gotten into using virtual reality to train their pilots. And so they are very much now in this space, and they are looking to expand within this space. So that becomes a precedent for using virtual reality in the aviation world. So in conclusion, I've got 2 slides here for conclusion. Remember the psychological theories, narrative transportation theory. You want to transport that user into the world. And then when you have them into the world, you want to then, through narrative processing, bring that story element in. And that will increase the highest degrees of transportation, really get them pulled into the story. And then through transmedia storytelling, you want to make sure that your virtual reality experience is consistent with your experiences that your customers have outside of the virtual reality. So make sure that your marketing, again, is realistic. If it's realistic on your marketing material, it's realistic in the virtual reality. You sort of don't want to mix modes of media there. And then with persuasion, you want to make sure that your persuasion is not a hard sell, but more of a borderline sell. And then through motivated reasoning, you can really give the customers, that extra incentive to just make that final purchase decision. And also virtual reality can help a customer be influenced by the company. It can help the company really connect with newer generations of customers. We want to introduce a strong visuospatial environment, and the customer can interact with that. And again, we can reduce the cost of aircraft demos. And so remember, when introducing virtual reality, keep in mind your psychological theories. You want to create that powerful and emotional experience. You want to develop the story narrative to really get the most out of the connection that the customer has with the virtual reality. Your software and your hardware, it's got to be easy to use and bug-free. You have to have tested it thoroughly beforehand. And you also want to make sure that you train the sales team so the user has the best experience. And that's all I have. That's my presentation on immersive virtual reality and selling airplanes.
Well done. Very, 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 very good job. That was
Thank
awesome.
you.
And super succinct too, because for like we talked about in the beginning, and like I said, kind of like in the intro, uh, VR is a topic that many are interested in, particularly in this program. A lot of people want to look at it for therapy, physical positive benefits, those types of things too. Also for some type of social good and change and the impact because of a lot of the theories that you're talking about in terms of like narrative transportation and motivated reasoning and those types of stuff. But looking at VR and the efficacy of it, or efficiency of it rather, as a sales perspective, specifically for aircrafts, is something that no one's ever looked at before here. So bravo on really laying a foundation and a playbook on what this even looks like and how to wrap our head around it and move forward. So very, very cool job. Very, very cool topic and excellent job in
Well,
making
thanks.
super,
Yeah,
super.
and I think you bring up a lot of the advocacy work and things like that,
Mhm.
and myself having done that in the past, I really think a lot of these principles really apply whether you're trying to sell a product or trying to sell, sort of something on the social side. So certainly on the social side, there's some other considerations, right? And a lot
Mhm.
more around the morale, moral
Yep.
aspects of it, things like that. But certainly the how-to part of it largely remains the same.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's those key theories is what you were talking about and what you have there. Those are the same exact things that are applicable to something that has a more of a social impact thing. Like you said, it's spot on because it's all about putting yourself in this environment, and we're all selling something, right?
Yeah,
If we're either
absolutely.
we're selling votes, right? To solicit vote, everything is a sale, right? For you to
Absolutely.
buy in a brand or toilet paper to a shoe for the gym or an aircraft piece of material, right? So since I know like this is your job, this is what you do, and this is why you were so passionate about like using this topic specifically, like current state, are they doing this now, or this is something that you were really looking to try and pitch to start to implement? And if so, like how far out do you think something like this is, like a couple
Well,
of years
yeah.
or-
So, we at my company, we have looked at virtual reality and particularly within the engineering side so that
Mhm.
engineers can visualize the work that they're doing. We have worked with one of the local universities. They have a cave, a virtual reality cave,
Yep.
and so we've gone in and looked at the work that they're doing. So as far as I know, we're not currently doing any virtual reality work with the customers
Mhm.
themselves. Although we have played around with the technology, and actually we played around not so much on the virtual reality side, but on the augmented reality side with the Google HoloLens and that sort of thing, which is really promising. And it's real. I've tried it on. It's really neat stuff, but I don't think that the technology is matured enough to where the customer is going to find it,
Mhm.
completely 100% useful. I know there's some companies out there that are doing some really good work with high-speed computers, the larger graphic laptops now, where they will show the inside of an airplane and then be able to change the colors of all of the different, fabrics and things like that, and then be able to kind of take a non-immersive tour through it. And that can be helpful for the customer to visualize because, right now, if you come to buy an airplane, we're going to take out some actual like leather swatches and we're going to put them on the table and we're going to put things together and sort of compare them that way. But it's really a different experience when you get to visualize it actually on the chairs, on the floor, on the ceiling, whatever it is.
Yep.
So I think, yeah, this technology is it's, we're not leveraging it to its fullest. I think as it matures, as the price technology comes down, it's going to be more widely available. And so I think we're going to see some of that in the coming years. Probably in the next 5 to 10 years we'll see some more of this. But
Yeah.
currently, right now, we're not I would say we're not widely using virtual reality to its fullest potential. And I think part of that is because the software side of it takes some time to really put these experiences together, right? And there's
Definitely.
more and more tools for making that easier without having to actually code things, right? So I
Mhm.
think as that technology develops, we'll start to see some more of it. And certainly I think we'll get the benefits from it. But again, building that story narrative around the product is sort of the hardest thing. And that's
Yeah.
one area that I don't think that we've really even scratched the surface on.
Yeah, because you brought that up in the research and in your presentation about like not only like training up the staff, right?
Right.
How to use it, because if they're fumbling around, then of course then your customer is going to be like, oh well, if he can't get it.
Yeah. They're
Right.
going to throw it away. Right.
Exactly. And that
So,
very much is a part of, I think, why we're still in this early adopter phase when, almost 10 years ago, people thought every household would have this by now. So there
right.
is still that gap. And, what people were predicting 5 to 10 years ago, we're not there yet. Those numbers aren't there. And I think, that's probably a number of reasons why. But yeah, you bring up a good point about like the story and what the purpose of it is, right? Like what type of environment can you customize it per customer, right? Like depending on what they're looking for, is it a plug and play or just everyone gets the same experience? So really starting to look at a case study of like, all right, well, let's look at it for this instance, very specific first, build that, test that, see how that goes. Um, would you recommend, or do you think of like any type of aftercare or survey stuff for the customer to get that type of information about like what to change, what in, like what to pivot, what worked, what didn't? Like what would that kind of look like in your industry?
Well, so in our industry, we do what we call customer advisory boards or cabs, and our customers are not shy at all about telling us what they think about, what they love about the airplanes, what they hate about them. So I think we would get a lot of feedback from the customers if we were to implement this, and they would tell us if it's useful or
Yeah,
not, right?
that's good.
Um, I think the way to really embrace this technology is to do it, kind of it's a big wide world, virtual reality is. And so I think, if you look at it taking one bite at a time out of the elephant, sort of starting with a short, 5 or 10 minute experience and then kind of expanding it from there,
Yeah.
and sort of doing some trial and error to see, what has a good effect and what really isn't moving the needle at all.
Mhm.
I did the Van Gogh experience, which if you haven't done is
Oh
very,
yeah.
very awesome. It's projection, they're projecting all over
Yeah.
the place, but at the end you can pay $5 and put a VR headset on and kind of walk through there's no interaction with it, but it's sort of a recorded video,
Yep.
if you will, but you get to turn your head around and see things. But they kind of show you Van Gogh's paintings, and then they show you the actual like backdrop of what he was painting. It was really, really awesome to, see the starry night, and then they
Right.
kind of open up and show you, well, like, here's the actual town that he was, taking inspiration from. So I think things like that can be helpful. Virtual reality in the aircraft space allows us to, like, 3D look at the airplane, take the wing skin off, kind of look at the parts underneath the wing, things that you couldn't normally see in real life. I think we have a good opportunity to bring those kind of experience to our customers, and sort of show things that we, again, couldn't show in real life.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. I did see the immersive Van Gogh experience when it came out here in Vegas.
It
Well,
was really cool. I really enjoyed that. I could have stayed there for way longer than I did. It was pretty wild.
yeah, it was really, really cool. And I just even watching like other people, right, and kind of go through it. And
Oh
there was
yeah,
that just like I could tell they've been there for hours,
yeah.
because it
The
is
people watching was definitely awesome at that.
yeah, because it is just such an immersive thing, right? And it was just very, very different and unique and an alternative way to look at things like this. And um there's colleagues that I have and clients that I have with my consulting work that are, that work for places like, the Museum of Moving Image, right?
Mm,
And they're putting in these types of installations, on a smaller scale, right?
yeah,
Like the Van Gogh thing, but it echoes your point, right? About like being able to create so many different experiences, right? And what type of campaign or impact do you want to have on them, right? And because especially with these types of things, it's one thing that gaming entertainment, that I think is it's on a side, right? Like that's its own kind of one and done type thing. But when we're looking at immersive tech from the perspective of having influence to buy something, right? Or to feel something, or to change our behavior, or to change the way we think about something, or to even present new information for us to take that away, right? So it's not a one and done. It's something that it's a prompt, right, to go somewhere else, and that somewhere else in your case is to buy, purchase, which is still very valid, obviously, like money makes everything. Um, So it's just very, very cool to see this and to know that there's such a spectrum to these types of things. Last question I'll ask you was like, did anything kind of surprise you while doing the research like this? Or was there something you wanted to include or maybe didn't have space for, or that if you were to show this to, someone within your business, that you would make sure that they really took away as a key note?
Yeah, well, I think, the first draft of my paper I sent you was like 10 or 15 pages too long, and you're like, oh, you've got to cut this back.
Yeah.
It is a wide open space, and there is just so much to really dig into. And
Mm,
I think the biggest challenge of like say bringing this to my company is saying, they know what VR is. To them, it's kind of gimmicky, right? And so getting them to see the value in what the customer can get out of this, and again, it's that a little bit of motivated reasoning again coming in, because it's hard to show them hard numbers of like, if you do this experience, you'll sell 5 more airplanes, right?
yeah.
Or if you do this experience, you'll have to do like 10 less demos this year. Those hard numbers don't exist until you try it out, right? And
Yep.
so I think that's the biggest challenge of getting companies to adopt this sort of stuff, is really getting them to have that business case to do it. It's something that they, I think, need to go off a little bit and have some faith on, right? And try it out again. It's small bites, right? And see what
Yeah.
those benefits are in small bites. And I think if a company really was to, put some, really adopt this and do it for, a couple of years in a row, they're going to start to see some benefits from it. But they probably won't see any benefit after, year one, right? I mean,
Right.
it's going to take more than 1 year to sort of, to see those benefits. So I think that's the biggest challenge of getting companies to adopt this. But in the aviation world, we have so many amazing stories about people using the airplanes for good. People really getting value out of them, and I think that's really where the intersection between the immersive environment and telling these stories can really be powerful. Because a lot of times in our marketing, we show fancy pictures of airplanes, we show the interior looks really cool, but there's nobody in it, right? And so I think if we can figure out a way to fuse those human stories in with
Yeah.
the features and benefits that the airplane has, then we will, then that's where we're going to see the maximum benefit. Because it's not like the auto industry. They'll put Matthew McConaughey in a
Yeah.
truck that nobody really cares about, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, I want to buy it because he's driving it, right? Like in the aviation world, our customers don't really care. They're just not moved the same way as the typical
Mhm.
consumer is, right? You're talking people that own businesses that that are they're just persuaded differently,
Totally.
and so I think that the company really needs to talk to him on a different level than say an auto manufacturer would.
Yeah. No, that's outstanding points for sure. All of those too, because yeah, it's not a copy and paste thing, right? You can't put, Celine Dion or whatever, like in an aircraft and be like,
Yeah,
it'll work the same way, like Matthew McConaughey and Cadillac or whatever it was that he had.
yeah. I think it was Lincoln, right,
Yeah,
where
Lincoln,
he
that's
did
it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
um
totally different demos, right?
yeah.
It's not gonna work the same. You're
Well,
right.
and I mean, some of our customers are celebrities, right? I mean, when I was
Sure.
doing marketing, I did do aircraft tours and tours of the factory with more than one celebrity. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to motivate a celebrity with another celebrity, right? They're not really impressed with that.
Yeah,
So,
but you bring
you
up the
know,
good point that it will take, someone to like just take that risk, right? Like
yeah,
that's why it's called ROI, and you take that risk in investing in a study, right? You do that comparative analysis to see, what worked, what didn't, why, and how can you improve and potentially scale upon that. And because then that would really make yourself that differentiator, right? That's what would
yeah.
separate you from your competitors.
Yeah, where I would really start would be to do the collaborative environment. So not so much build a story, but which I think I'd work on that sort of in the background. But if you could get the collaborative workspace thing figured out,
Yeah.
if you have to just mail the customer a headset, right? I mean, they're a couple
Train
hundred
them.
dollars a
Yeah.
piece now. They're really not that expensive, and then
Yeah.
them and the sales team can sit in a spatially feel themselves in the same room and sort of it would be interesting to do further research, I guess, and look at the emotional connections that are made
Yes.
over just a Zoom call or a phone call, and see what sort of benefits there are there.
Yeah, because I mean, it just becomes straight up sales, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? But it's
Yeah,
like when, you know, you're at any type of, retail clothing store buying jewelry or whatever, if they have the gift of the gab and become complimentary, then I'm like, yeah, let me get that. And you had no intention of getting it when you walked in. Like sales,
absolutely.
that happens all they upsell me like that at the nail salon all the time. It's like, oh, you want
Yep.
your hair out time? I'm like, oh, like
Well, yeah, and particularly with airplanes, there's a lot of conversations around. Well,
sure,
tell me about this, tell me about that. It's not. It's a much more in depth process than buying, even a car.
sure.
So we do a lot of pre sales marketing. Where okay, where's the customer live? What airports they want to go to? So we have people to go run an analysis and show, okay, we'll take this long and burn this much fuel and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So those kind of conversations, I think, would be better in a collaborative environment.
Definitely. And like you said in the beginning, like they're getting younger, they're sharper, more fluent with these types of things. So if your potential customers are already savvy to this, then it behooves the industry to catch up and at least be able to meet them at this level as well and offer them a unique experience that in the sales world is what you're selling is an
Absolutely.
experience as opposed to the actual product or service.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Matt, Chris, this has been absolutely amazing. Again, outstanding job overcoming extreme doesn't even cut it. So I don't even know how to say going through all that you have in an extremely condensed amount of time, plus your other priorities and stuff. Just bravo. And let me be the first to say welcome to the community of scholars and congratulations.
Well, thank you so much.
You were so, so very welcome. This was outstanding.
Awesome.
Yes, so good.